It is time now for the business news with Emma Hatton. Hi, Emma. Reserve Bank's given us some insight into how it feels its bond buying program is working. So what might it do next?
Hi, Lisa. Yes, so the Reserve Bank held a webinar today for anyone who wanted to dial into to talk about their latest monetary policy statement and explain kind of exactly what it's doing. And they did this because, before COVID, the Reserve Bank kind of operated in the background. It wasn't really, in the forefront of anybody's mind. I don't think people really cared what they were doing so long as, interest rates were steady and inflation wasn't through the roof. So, but since COVID, everything they've been doing has become quite mainstream because they've got such an important role to play in helping keep things stable. So what they did is they had this webinar so that they could kind of explain some of these concepts and try and get through why they were doing it and what it was and what they might do next. So its chief economist sort of took the reins on a lot of it, which was really great to hear from him. And basically they're saying, look, their big government bond buying program is working, and we can see that because retail rates are falling. And you might have refixed your mortgage lately and noticed that you can get a better rate for it and things like that. May have also noticed that you're not getting as much from your term deposits and things like that as well. And so they're saying, look, that's working. However, that LSAP program, it will only take rates down so far, and it might need to look at what it needs to do to get them down even further. And it's starting to look at something called negative interest rates. And what they are talking about there is not your mortgage going into negative and not retail rates going negative. Unfortunately, the bank is probably not going to pay you to take out a mortgage with them. But what they're talking about there is dropping the wholesale rate, so the rate that between them and the retail banks. And so it's saying that that's something that they might look to do early next year. And what they'll probably do alongside that is some term lending, so they'll lend some extra money to banks so that there's just more money for the banks to lend out as well. And it's all just trying to increase this, the spending, make it as attractive as possible for people to borrow and for people to spend and to just keep the economy well oiled. So it was really nice to hear from them and just kind of explain some of those concepts which we might hear thrown around quite a bit, things like quantitative easing and that, and just kind of explain what they are. So that's where we're at. It's working for now. They're going to have a look in the new year and see what the outlook is like for the economy. And if they think more needs to be done, that negative rate could be on the cards. But yes, don't get too excited by the thought that the bank might pay you to actually take your money out of the bank.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to KiwiSaver. So there are calls to scrap the default KiwiSaver fund scheme. Now, why is that?
Yeah, so this is a call that's come from a financial advice firm, and what they're saying is that people who are newly signed up to KiwiSaver, the plan is at this stage is that you just go into one of 9 default fund schemes. And so it's just randomly allocated. It's even across all 9. All the big banks have a default fund and then there's other ones as well. And what you can do is you can decide what scheme you want to go in right at the start, or once you're in the default one, you can change out at any time, or you can opt out of KiwiSaver altogether. The criticism is that the default funds are conservative funds, so they're low risk, low return. And a lot of the people that are signing up to KiwiSaver for the first time are young people. They're, people getting their first jobs and things like that. And there's no real reason for them to be in a really low risk fund because they're not going to be wanting to take their money out anytime soon. They really should be in a high growth fund. And so what the issue is that if people don't know that they're in a default fund, they just think, I've got KiwiSaver, I'm doing my bit, but they don't know that there's a different type of fund that they should be in. They just stay there until it's, maybe they think, I'll look at getting my first home. And by that stage, they're way behind on how much money they could have had if they were in a high growth fund. So the plan is if they scrapped the default fund scheme, people could get the advice up front as they're signing up for KiwiSaver. They can look at exactly what fund they should go in, and they wouldn't get trapped in this conservative fund and not really know anything about it. The issue with that is that if people are going to be disengaged with their KiwiSavers, they're probably going to be disengaged no matter what system is set up. And so what the alternative might be is that if people don't take up this financial advice at the time of signing up, they might never select a KiwiSaver fund at all. And so that's, arguably even worse than going into one that gives them low returns. So there's a real balance there between how do fund providers contact those who just aren't engaged with their KiwiSaver to educate them on how it works. I mean, because we saw what happens when people don't know how KiwiSaver works. There was like over $1 billion worth of funds transferred from high growth to conservative during that March quarter when the markets just went right down. And it was because people didn't understand that it was an investment and it would likely come back. And so a lot of people locked in those gains, those losses rather, which was really, really sad. And so, there's an argument there that the default scheme isn't working and that default fund providers aren't trying hard enough to reach those people. The default fund providers reject that completely and say, look, some people are just basically, we just can't reach them.
Before you go, Emma, let's do a quick whip around the markets.
Yep, so the markets were up today, quite nicely actually, up 1.5%. So getting back some of those gains that they lost over the last couple of days, closed down 11,836 points. New Zealand dollar is trading at 65.4 US cents, 90.8 Australian and 49.4 British pence.
Thanks, Emma. Emma, have a lovely weekend at Lockdown Level 2 in Wellington. That's Emma Hatton with our business news.